big attendance in person here tonight just because of the holiday week. I want to begin by welcoming everybody to the April 2022 El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee meeting. I'm John David, the chair. We're very short-staffed tonight, and it's fine because we have very small attendance here, but a lot of people online. John Razzler, vice chair, is not here tonight. He's not available. Tim White's under the weather today, and I know Brooke, I was just talking to, there you are.
I'm here.
Brooke, one of our other officers, secretary, she's here. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. The anticipation was this is a short agenda, but we have some matters we're gonna delve into that might take a little bit longer. Hopefully we can get everybody in and out quickly tonight. So I wanna thank everyone for attending on a holiday week, and I hope everyone's well. So we're calling the meeting to order, and the first, oops, let me make sure I'm on the right screen for myself. First order of business is the adoption of our meeting agenda. Unless there's any APAC members that have changes they'd like to see. I'm not seeing anybody put their hand up virtually, so we're going to go ahead and move along. When we begin our meetings, the very first thing we do is provide an opportunity for public comment. So with that, we have a new format this year where we ask community members if they want to submit public comments in advance of the meeting to go ahead and share that. We did have one this week. It was from D. Bingham, and his only comment was, and this is not within our power, but his comment was to please stop giving builders a pass on traffic improvements. We must stop allowing them to kick the can down the road, either pay up or wait until somebody else does. So I started off public comment there. Is there anybody in the room that has a public comment? We have microphones all around. So not seeing that. Anybody online, go ahead and push the raise hand button in Zoom if you have something to say, or if APAC members have something, jump on in. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move right along. The next opportunity we have is for supervisor comments from District 1 Supervisor John Heidel. And John, you have your microphone there. If you want to go ahead, go right in and jump in.
Okay, and thank you for allowing me to make a couple brief comments this evening, but I want to start with two things. Number one, the last board meeting was held this past Tuesday. One of the more difficult things to address was not related to El Dorado Hills, but in our rural communities, and particularly the community of Cool. What they've seen is a lot of interest in developing properties out there, commercial properties in particular, but also some multifamily. Some of the areas out there have a design review overlay involved, which is called a combining zone, and a lot of the properties don't. So the area where the latest commercial development is going in does have that combining zone, which gives the ability for the public to weigh in a little bit on things like aesthetics, right? They want it to be compatible with a rural theme and not look super modern, et cetera, et cetera. But there are other parcels out there that don't have that same overlay. So the proposal was to consider putting in an urgency overlay in across all the rural areas in the county. That just didn't seem to be practical or warranted. So the way we ended up working through it was trying to define how many parcels were involved in that don't have the overlay that the community would be interested in including in the overlay. And it turns out there's only 8. So that gives us a limited scope for Cool only to start focusing on what can we do to bring that forward through the normal process that requires a planning commission hearing and other things. So it isn't going to happen fast, but I think it's a message that we're seeing in a lot of the rural areas that there is substantial interest in developing commercial sites in those rural centers. And so I think that's going to continue. So it's not the kind of thing that's easy to address, but I think for the time being, knowing that we're also working on design standards in a number of different communities, the board has put together funding for that. We have a consultant on board now, and that should kick into high gear here, I'm guessing, with the next 3 to 4 weeks and really start the public meeting process again. But so that's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to mention is more in the future. That's next Tuesday's board meeting. We will have a presentation on an emergency declaration for homeless housing. And that kind of ties in with the annual point in time counts in terms of looking at how many homeless you have. If you exceed a certain threshold, by state law, you're required to declare a shelter housing, an emergency homeless shelter housing condition. And so we didn't qualify for that when we did the last point in time count the pit, but we do believe at this point, in order to get something moving forward, recognizing the fire season is coming and the fire threat, particularly in the city of Placerville, that it's time to, in earnest, look at what we can do to provide a sheltering facility to get people out of the woods and into more safe conditions and better facilities and where they can get care and treatment and support for what they're looking for. So that's going to be a big discussion at next Tuesday's meeting. There's several sites that facilities has proposed, and so it's going to be kind of weighing in on which site seems to be more preferable. And there's kind of two parts, short-term, long-term. But I think that's going to be a very healthy discussion, and we'll have to just wait and see where it ends up. But my sense is we will get direction to move forward with an emergency type shelter somewhere in the District 3. So we're not talking about anything that would be in District 1 to start out with. This need is immediately around Placerville. So it's not just with city limits, it's District 3, which surrounds Placerville and includes the city, is where the sites have been identified. So everybody will probably have a different opinion and weigh in and stuff, but hopefully we'll be able to reach some form of agreement as to a preferred site for the emergency situation, the immediate need, and then look downstream further and determine if the site that's selected can be expanded to include the things we want in the navigation center. So all those things are open to discussion. So Health and Human Services is going to be a big part of that conversation, and the community's welcome to weigh in on it as well. So we always have the ample public comment period. And so we'll look forward to seeing what those comments are, and a decision will be made, move forward or not, and we'll determine what that is and where it is if it moves forward. So
it's a deliberative sort of discussion that you'll have something that you can identify and move forward.
Right, we have a
Or not
proposal.
move forward,
Right,
but yeah.
we have a proposal and a write-up that's prepared by staff in terms of their assessment, and they're trying to be very open-minded in terms of not saying this is our number one recommendation and this is our number two. They really want the board to discuss it, and the city of Placerville has to weigh in on it as well, because the majority of the choices of available facilities are within the city limits. And obviously that can impact their businesses. So it isn't strictly the county that has to be engaged in doing that. So I'm hopeful it will get inputs from the city before we do our deliberation. But then we'll be able to make a selection. So it's going to be an interesting discussion and decision point. So if you're interested in affordable housing and what's going on in El Dorado County, that's one you probably want to dial into. And there's Zoom meetings, so you can attend via Zoom. You don't have to go to the county board chambers if you don't want to, but
They're on YouTube as well. So.
yes, right. So there's a lot of availability to access and participate in a discussion. So see how that goes. It's next Tuesday, April 19th. The board meetings start at 9 a.m. and I'm trying to remember on the agenda when that is actually, because I know it's time specific, but I don't remember. Cindy,
I went through it when I got the email today, and I don't remember the time.
Yeah. So, yeah.
The Board of Supervisors agendas are always posted on the APAC website as well. So
right.
If it's easy for you to get there, just look under Documents, El Dorado County Board of Supervisors, and you'll find them there. So are there any questions for Supervisor Heidel?
Questions or other comments I can take at this time? Right.
I have a quick question, John.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So with regard to CSD and I guess athletic fields and the development of Bass Lake, more it's like a question of, is there any input from the community left for how that's developed?
I would have to say yes, I believe there is. They did a survey and collected a lot of information, and they've come up with some conceptual designs, but I think there's always room for public input. So
you want to grab a microphone there, Jeff, so the people online can hear you. Just press the button so it turns green. So Jeff's here tonight. Jeff works at the CSD.
Okay.
And, great.
I know that he's at planning realm. So
yeah, Jeff Kernan with the El Dorado Hills CSD Planning Department. We tomorrow's board meeting, we are set to award the contract for final design, construction drawings, and construction management for Bass Lake. And that final design period will include some meeting and outreach. There's not a schedule yet, so I can't tell you when that is, but that was in the scope. So yes, there's is some more time and opportunity to provide input on design.
Great. And are there any other projects in the works for, say, public fields, whether they be baseball fields, softball fields, aside from Bass Lake in El Dorado Hills that are being developed?
Not anything new. There are some existing parks that are have some consideration of renovations, but that is not decided until tomorrow's meeting either.
So
Okay.
yeah, there's a list of park projects that are in
Right.
stages of development.
Right.
Nothing with like significant playing fields like Brooke is describing yet.
Not
There's
like a fields complex,
Yeah.
like a sports field
the
complex.
new Blackstone Park is
No
not
field.
the same scope as
Yeah.
even the one that now and CSD is in discussions, or well they're talking with wind communities. There's an agreement, and it just depends on how wind comes back with their project for the Creekside Village. Remember the name right, but we have not heard anything back from their EIR, so no draft yet. But there's an opportunity there for a lot of park space and a lot of money to be spent. And that's also the other side of that, of the discussion, is that, how do you fund this? The community wants these things, but it's not an easy thing to realize, so.
Brooke, you're familiar with Saratoga Estates Community Park. Obviously, no
Oh, yeah.
big playing fields or anything, but that's certainly a work
No.
in progress too. So
There is
Yeah,
a
and
groundbreaking event for the one of the Saratoga parks on Wednesday next week, right? On the 30th or the 20th, I'm sorry. It's on the 20th.
Wednesday at 2:30.
right.
yeah,
Of course I
they've
can't
graded
attend.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
but-
no, that definitely is not large enough to host a baseball park.
No. It's a real small facility, but I understand ultimately maybe be a zip line over there in the new facility, which seems to be a point of real interest these days with the
Wow.
kids. So
That is
We'll
a
see.
huge point of interest for the children. No, what got me going on that is my son recently did make a travel ball team, and noticing and traveling to all the different facilities around El Dorado County, but not in El Dorado County, there's so much lost revenue and opportunity that we are missing out on. So I was curious if there was something in the works to compete with some of our neighboring counties.
All right, well, good
So,
questions. Well, hopefully.
thank you.
There's a lot of stuff queued up to come online. It's just a matter of funding and realizing it, so.
And that homeless item is at 1:30.
1:30 for that
Okay.
agenda item, okay.
I'm allocated 1:30, which means it can't start before 1:30, but it could start a little later than that.
Yes, as it frequently does. So are there any more questions for John? I don't see any hands going up. All right, well, thank you, John.
Certainly.
All right, the next item, I'm gonna share the screen real quick so we can see what we're talking about. It's hard to drive and talk at the same time. Here we go. And it would be that one, I'm assuming. Okay, so the first topic in terms of projects or elements of projects that we're going to talk about tonight, it's at the Planning Commission tomorrow, in fact, it's a tentative subdivision map revision for the Summerbrook project, which dates back to its approval in 2008. And I'm going to jump through this so we can see, so people watching or seeing the meeting can understand what we're talking about. Summerbrook is a 29 lot project, and it's located technically in Rescue. It's across the street from Pleasant Grove Middle School, but it's close enough to El Dorado Hills that APAC made several comments and provided feedback on the project through its history from 2007 forward. Our last public comments were in 2004. There was another change to the tentative map in terms of I want to say it was for scheduling in 2018. But right now, the applicant is asking to remove some conditions of approval, specifically number 25, 27, 28. 25 requires the installation of a traffic signal. And basically, we're going to hear tonight why they're asking for that and why they believe it's justified in terms of what they presented to the planning department and to the transportation department. So I'm going to jump through this just to let people see what it is, and then we have some discussion to follow. So with us tonight, Senior Civil Engineer in the Transportation Department, Adam Bain's going to talk about this. And Adam, I'm going to show people what we're talking about, and then I'm going to turn it over to you because you're the expert. So here we go. Summerbrook, as I said, is 29 lots. It's along Green Valley Road at basically at the Silver Springs Parkway, the new intersection. It's very close to that. It's right behind Pleasant Grove House. This is the area on the map here that we're talking about. Pleasant Grove Middle School's here. Pleasant Grove House, a historic site's right here. Silver Springs Parkway at the bottom, and their development. It's all large lots in terms of, I believe they're custom or semi-custom homes. But that's a view of where we're talking about. This gives a better idea of where, the overall area. And again, the middle school's right here. The project area is sort of in here, and it wraps around this. The intersection we're talking about in terms of a traffic signal is Deer Valley Road. And there are two Deer Valley Road connections to Green Valley. This is the western connection. And it's across from the entrance to Green Springs Ranch, which is a private gated community. Along Green Valley Road in this area, there are several stoplights already. There's a stoplight all the way over the other end at Cambridge. There's a stoplight at Cameron Park Drive. There's a stoplight at Bass Lake Road. There's a stoplight at Silver Springs, the new intersection. There's a stoplight at the entrance to the school. And now this project will be using that signalized intersection to tie into Green Valley Road, and they'll be using the traffic signal as well. And then they have a second entrance just several hundred feet down the road at the other, to the west. So this is what Deer Valley Road and Green Valley Road looked like in 2008 before there were improvements made. 2 lanes, no turn pockets. Green Springs Ranch is to the south. Deer Valley goes to the north and wraps around. This is what it looks like today. You'll notice that there's left-hand turn pockets and right-hand turn pockets in both travel directions on Green Valley Road. And this is sort of where the turn pockets begin when you're heading westbound on Green Valley Road, and that's a little closer to Green Valley Road at the intersection. Coming the other way, if you're heading eastbound, this is where the turn pockets begin. It's a nice long turn pocket for both left and right. And then this is closer to the actual intersection itself. And then just from Deer Valley, this is on the north side looking to the east on the upper photo and looking to the west in the lower photo. And then on the other side of Deer Valley, coming out of Green Springs Ranch, the top photo again is looking to the east, the bottom photo is looking to the west. So in 2014, APAC made comments regarding a request they had, and I believe that the major element of this was that they're removing a sound wall, if I'm remembering right. I have to go back and pull it. That was one of it. The sound wall was included in the original plan, and it's not anymore. So basically, APAC had said that provided conditional support to the project or the changes to the project based on the improvements scheduled for Green Valley Road. And specifically, we highlighted the concerns about the then recently completed Green Valley Road corridor analysis, a study that was done that identified several shortcomings of Green Valley Road and areas that could be improved. So, and then following that, there was a phasing plan modification in 2018 that the Planning Commission also reviewed and heard. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Adam, if you want to go ahead and unmute, and thank you very much. We asked you on short notice to participate tonight. What can you tell us about the conditions for this project that have sort of prompted the request from the applicant?
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I very much appreciate it. This group does an excellent job of disseminating information to the community and collecting community input, and it's a valuable resource to us as staff. So I appreciate the invitation and thank you for the opportunity. The Summerbrook project's been ongoing. As you mentioned, it was approved back in 2008. We've been working with the developer on improvement plans, and they've started work out there. I'm sure folks have noticed that it's gone on out there. Back a number of years ago, there was discussions between the county and the developer about the continued need for a signal at the Green Valley Deer Valley intersection. When the project was originally conditioned back in 2008, there was a traffic analysis done that showed there'd be level of service issues at that intersection, and so there was a condition applied to mitigate those impacts. Fast forwarding, that was 2008, right before the housing crash and changes that have occurred. And the county keeps a travel demand model, which we use to forecast traffic. And back in those days, we were forecasting somewhere around 3% growth. And that was part of the plan. There were many large projects that were kind of in the pipeline. I know when I applied here in 2004, I think we had $200 million worth of capital projects on Highway 50 corridor alone, anticipating some large scale growth. But due to housing demand and various other things, we never did quite realize the growth that was anticipated. As a matter of fact, we've seen less than 1% growth, which is the model's been recalibrated to now. So we had discussions with the developer about how to address this situation, because originally we anticipated that there's a thing we refer to as traffic signal warrant analysis. And it's a systematic way to go through and analyze intersections and determine whether or not a signal is appropriate there or not. And it's a helpful tool for us as staff to be able to look at, because it's an objective, there's criteria for it. And it kind of gets you more in a vein of being able to analyze and compare projects and impacts on a quantitative basis, as opposed to what folks see and feel about their community. Those are all very, very important, but the traffic signal analysis or warrant analysis is kind of a quantitative way of taking a look at that. So in 2019, the developer asked the traffic engineer to go out and do some traffic counts to see if things had changed, and it turned out they had. They did it again in 2021. The emphasis for that was that the Silver Springs Parkway had been, signal was in place, there was more development in that area, and traffic patterns had changed. Unfortunately, 2021 was impacted by COVID, and so the traffic counts out there are difficult to assimilate into and compare with other values, because our world's all changed so dramatically. So that's a little bit of the background. The developer has come forward and asked to be relieved of that that requirement now, because it's no longer warranted. Back in the original analysis, it showed it would have a level of service impact down to F in the future, and that hasn't occurred. As a matter of fact, we have right now, it's the overall intersection is level of service A, with the worst leg being C. We did another projection and don't anticipate that it will go to E, which is the threshold for requiring it there, until 2041. So the 10-year projection still has a level of service okay there. So they asked, what do we want to do? And mentioned that it was a condition of approval. That's a discretionary action by our planning commission, and ultimately the decisions to approve or deny their request can lie with the board as well. So at a staff level, we analyzed their signal warrant analysis and took a look at what's actually occurring out there, and came to the determination that a signal will be needed at some point, but it's not needed today. And there's a couple of reasons for the staff level recommendation for approval. The first is it doesn't meet signal warrants, and there's a little bit of a liability issue there. When we have signalized intersections, they do tend to have more rear end accidents than non-signalized intersections. Now, those tend to be less severe than the broadside or other accidents that occur. So folks' comments about safety and things are well-founded, but in the total number of accidents, they tend to go up when you signalize an intersection. The second element of that is it will be TIF or TIM fee funded, and that's a limited resource pool that we try to keep as whole as possible to do the most important projects as soon as we can. And in this particular case, the developer would have to advance the funds to construct it, which wouldn't impact the TIF program initially, but they would be subject to reimbursement. And so those funds will ultimately be paid out of the TIM fund. We have a traffic signal ranking system where we take a look at the needs of the signals and the intersections throughout the county. And this is a tier 3 criteria at this point. We have tier 1 that are needed now. Tier 2 meet some warrants, and we're monitoring to put in. And then tier 3 are things that we need to monitor and do in the future. So all that system has kind of changed a little bit since 2008, and some of the assumptions have changed as well. So for those reasons, there's also another thing that the public may or may not be aware of, and you mentioned it in the opening to this. There was a history of some severe accidents at that location. In the period from 2010 to 2014, there were 8 accidents in that location. We went out there and we did do a capital project to add the turn pockets, as you've seen. And since then, we've only had 1. So we've seen the safety benefits of that project come to fruition. We also took a look at the Green Valley Corridor Safety Study and its recommendations there. And the recommendation out of that safety study at this location was to analyze it and continue to monitor it to see if the safety improvements that were installed became effective. And we came to the determination that it did. So those are some of the reasons why we, as staff level, would prefer to see resources used other places. However, those are not, the decision to change a condition is a discretionary action, and it's a policy level with the planning commissioner or the board of supervisors. And unfortunately, they have a much more difficult job than we as staff do. They have bigger picture issues that they have to evaluate. And so as staff, we don't it's not our proper role to advocate for or against a project. We're simply trying to administrate the program as best we can and move forward with the policies that are set. Those other decisions are much more difficult, and I don't envy those folks. One other element there too is the maintenance of signals comes out of our county road fund, and it is very, very limited. Folks are aware that that with more modern electric vehicles and less gas tax, the revenue sources for the road fund, which we use to maintain all of the county's roadway network, are very limited, and they're much more limited than they used to be. And we've done an analysis, and it's somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 per year it takes to operate and maintain a signal. That includes going out there and adjusting the timing and modernizing technologies as it kind of evolves, which is moving faster than it ever has before. So for those reasons, we felt that it was appropriate to defer the construction of this intersection signalization until it's actually warranted by the actual growth that occurs. There's a whole host of comments that we've received from folks, and most of them, a large majority of them are opinions about how things should be and letting developers off the hook and those things, and those are absolutely valid comments and concerns and opinions. But when it comes down to the technical evaluation of whether or not the signal was warranted and whether or not it's the best use of those funds, it was our conclusion that it could be deferred. The funds will still be in the TIM fee program, and we can move that project forward whenever the signal warrants are met. But at this time, we didn't feel that they were met or needed. So that's kind of an overview of things. I did review the letter that we received from APAC, and I'm prepared to go through those on a item by item basis if you'd like, or I'm available to answer questions. And there's one other thing I wanted to mention that the public was probably not aware of. We had a staff meeting today. We've received a lot of comments. Some of those included legal opinions regarding the sufficiency of the CEQA analysis and whether or not that was adequate. So in the staff meeting, including legal counsel, we discussed that, and staff will be recommending to the Planning Commission tomorrow that we continue this item offline so that though we have adequate time to address and respond to those comments and make sure that we've got all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed given the information we've got. So I don't want to dissuade anybody from going to the planning commission. The decision to continue it will be with the planning commission, and they may choose not to continue it. So if folks want to go and provide their input, we certainly don't want folks not to go. But in the event that it is continued, we didn't want folks taking up their valuable time when there might be a more appropriate time at a later date to provide those comments. So with that, I'll open it up to you as to whether or not you want me to go through the kind of the response or your comments, or whether you want me to answer questions. Kind of up to you.
You know, I think it'd be more appropriate right now to see if there are questions, but I did want to say that, you know, we did make our public comment on it without the benefit of the discussion we're having today, obviously. And so we were looking at the clock, and we determined that, you know, if we're going to make a public comment, we just need to put it in now. And basically what our comment was that it came down to was that, you know, elements of a lot of conditions of approval across many different projects are sort of intertwined. Maybe not so much in this instance, but in other projects. We look at the history of Bass Lake Road, how, you know, we're always told that up through about 2015 that there was going to be a 4-lane road for most of Bass Lake Road. 2015, it was determined, hey, you know, the development, as you described, hasn't happened to the level that was expected, so therefore not needed at this time. But then elements like frontage improvements are obviously not going to be added to some of the projects. They're deferred and they're collecting payments. They're just not making the improvements. Essentially because there is no 4-lane alignment yet, and why would you improve the frontage if you're going to rip it up? So there are things like that we talked about among our subcommittee members. And the other thing we also talked about was that when, you know, an applicant comes back and asks for, and this primarily Tim White, our vice chair, his focus was that when they come back and they ask for something and they want to remove something, that there's a fiscal analysis that's involved with projects, and that if you're removing a condition, well, you know, it's not just the one element of the condition in terms of CEQA, or, you know, it's a mitigated negative declaration or an EIR, but it's the financial impact to other elements of the project and other projects. An example we were talking about was the fact that, you know, there's a high school property behind Pleasant Grove Middle School right now. And the reality is they're probably not going to build a high school there in 20 or 30 or 40 years. I probably just jinxed it, sorry. But, you know, if this project doesn't provide the traffic signal, we know that a school is not going to provide the traffic signal. That's just not how it works. So I just want to describe the APAC response based off of what we saw on the Planning Commission agenda, and, you know, not having the benefit of this conversation tonight. But with that, I do think that it's beneficial to get comments. So I'm gonna go to the room first. Is there anybody in the room that has any public comments they'd like to make or ask Adam a question? Everyone's shy tonight, Adam. I'm gonna go ahead and change it over and look online for our Zoom attendees. If you want to press the raise hand button, we'll let you jump in and ask these questions. It looks like people are shy here too. So I'm looking. All right, I don't see anybody putting their hands up. So essentially, I'll ask a question, Adam, and maybe you can respond to it. When we looked at, they did the last traffic analysis, the physical on site, it was in June of 2021. How do they factor in the school traffic if they're doing the counts during that? Because you know, I'm 4 years removed from having a kid at that school. And I know that in the mornings when I would drive them, and they all drive now, so it's to my benefit and terror. But when I would drive them to school, you know, I would turn from Bass Lake Road and stop. And then I would stop again at Silver Springs, even though it wasn't a through connected project yet, the signal was there. And people were stopping 3 across in the intersection because they're trying to get to the left turn lane, they're trying to go straight, and other people are driving in the bicycle lane. And then I haven't been there to see what the impact of Silver Springs has been on how that traffic flows now for the school with the road connected and open. So when they do that analysis in 2021, the road is open by then, there are no school kids present. How do they account for that school volume?
I don't believe they did, but they also did the same analysis back in February of 2019. So that they, as an overall look. The other element there is that the Pleasant Valley Middle School changed its circulation, and we worked with them extensively on that There used to be a history of folks dropping off folks on Silver Springs Parkway that had to change once it got opened up, and some other things. So the circulation has changed there and is drastically better than it was. So the 21 analysis doesn't include that, but the analysis was for the Green Valley, Deer Valley, not for the Pleasant Valley or the middle school. And this project will attach the fourth leg to that intersection, that signalized intersection at the school. So yes, it has an impact, and it's always difficult to quantify all the elements that occur out there. But the Deer Valley signal is far enough away that the queues didn't back up to that point. So we felt that the level of service analysis was still adequate.
Okay. Yeah, because and this is anecdotal, right? As we all are, because we're all traffic
Absolutely.
experts, except for when we need a real one. Thank you, Adam. But my experience has been taking kids to like doctor's appointments in Folsom and coming back on Green Valley when those schools were letting out. It was backing up close to Deer Valley Road, like 4 years ago.
Okay.
The conditions, like you said, have probably changed. And another element, what you had mentioned about the improvement in the circulation plan there at the school, when Silver Springs was constructed in 2014, the road elevation right there was changed so that easternmost parking lot exit and driveway, they lost the ability to use that because cars, they high center, you can't get out of it. I can get out of my truck when I come in, my trailer hitch, it doesn't hit, but so they did lose some connectivity to the road there. So there's technically only 2 driveways in and out instead of 3. So are there any other questions in the room? So Adam, if there's anything else you think you'd like to touch on, if there's anything specific in our response that you want to address, our response is our response, and I think this conversation tonight informs us a little better. But I appreciate anything that you have to share, and if not, then I would love to let you.
Well, let me ask one question, John, and this is off the traffic stuff, but since you participated in the meeting, were there new findings relative to the environmental impacts? Is that what we're asking to be able to respond to? Because typically that's the only thing that opens up a CEQA. And I think this was a mitigated negative deck project, right? So I'm just kind of surprised with what I'm hearing, unless there was some kind of a new finding.
So there was a CEQA analysis that was done. It was done by a consultant, and it goes through the planning department. So I'm speaking a little bit out of my area of expertise here. But there were some, but you're correct. It was a mitigated negative declaration. And there was a question about whether or not the signal at the Green Valley, Deer Valley intersection was an impact or whether it was a mitigation. And so that's been questioned by several folks, and legal counsel thought that we needed to make sure that we had time to provide a thoughtful analysis for that. They did do an analysis of it with the traffic study. The traffic analysis is what the impact was. It was level service impact. We've reviewed the new analysis and are comfortable that that impact no longer exists, but it was a matter of documenting the information that we've reviewed and making sure that that's available to the public. And for those reasons, legal counsel thought we needed time to be able to formulate an adequate response to those comments. So from my standpoint, I don't believe that there's going to be, I believe that there was an impact previously, it's not there now. And that would, if the project were brought forth today, it wouldn't be conditioned to signalize that intersection because it doesn't meet the warrants. However, those projects have been approved for a long time. The comments that have been provided that these are all interrelated, and it's one project has an effect on the other are absolutely valid. And modeling those things and funding a capital improvement program and managing a TIF program are extraordinarily complex matters that require high level modeling and evaluation, and then ultimately very difficult decisions for the board. It's a large list of wants and a small list of resources. So our job as best we can do is to provide base information, and then unfortunately the commission and the board have the difficult decisions of choosing. So we very much appreciate the comments that were provided by APAC. You're an excellent resource to us. The comments that you provide are letting us know what the community's interests are, and you're very well involved with the development and know the history of these types of things. And the more we can coordinate and the better we can communicate, I think the better off everyone will be, and it'll make those decisions for the board and the commission more informed, and I think that's a good thing. So we welcome your comments. We appreciate them. I don't think there was anything in particular in the in your comments that I feel compelled to respond to, but more than happy to answer any other questions you might have.
So we're keeping Adam late tonight. Anyone want to raise their hand to ask a question?
Didn't get all dressed up for nothing.
Well, and you're sitting there in the office too. I appreciate you. You know, it's I like to remind people when we have county staff participate in our discussions, this is the end of a very long day for them, and we're making it longer. So if there are no other discussion points or questions, Adam, thank you very much for attending tonight. We always appreciate the department's participation, and hopefully we try not to keep you so late next time.
It's our pleasure, and we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Adam.
Have a good day.
All right. With that, I gotta grab the right tool here. I'm going to go ahead and share this because we're going to have a quick discussion of some things, and it's best to see it. So the next item tonight on our agenda, there are two items that are sort of involved with each other. The first one's there's a TAC meeting on the 11th, which is a technical advisory committee meeting among county planners and DOT and agencies that are impacted by development. We used to get invitations. We did not get an invitation to this one, so I can't tell you the outcome of this TAC meeting other than that it's part of the process for approving this request for a conditional use permit. So what we're talking about, it's a quick car wash, which is perilous to say. It's hard to say. So where that is at, it's basically at the corner of Sophia Parkway and Green Valley Road. A couple years ago, we had seen a project that was approved, the EDH Folsom self-storage lot, which is in the same area. It shares a property line here. And the same, many of the same project applicants are working on this as well. And I've talked to them, and they will be coming back to talk to us when they're further along in the process on these two interrelated projects. So corner of Silver Valley and Sophia Parkway and Green Valley. The quick car wash would be at the back of the project. There's a wetland, a stream that runs through it. That would be right up against that. Here's a satellite map of the area. Again, Green Valley Road, Folsom Lake is on the north side, Sophia Parkway over here. And the project area is back here right along this wetland. Here's oops, I went too far. Sorry. So, did I miss it? I should probably read it here. Where'd it go? Well, okay. So it's conditional use permit, which is provides them ability to use this project specifically, this use for this location and this project. This is part of a bigger project, and so we'll move along so you can see what that is. And that is the El Dorado Hills Sophia Parkway Neighborhood Retail Center Development Plan, which is also fun to say. So this is the project, and again, the quick quack is at the back of it. This is a sideways view here, Sophia Parkway on the east, Green Valley on the north. They have one proposed restaurant building, one proposed multi-use commercial building, one proposed smog and auto repair shop, and one quick quack car wash. So their application went in at the end of March. I want to say the project documents were available on the 30th or the 31st. Again, same area, the purple place across the road to the east and on the north. And this is the applicant's sort of line drawing of their property lines for this development. And the El Dorado Hills self-storage was over here. There's also, there's another application, a pre-app for a indoor boat and RV storage behind it. So this is sort of the closer look at the drawing. The thing that stuck out to me, and we haven't had any discussion with the applicants yet, is that for the two buildings, a restaurant over here on the west and the multi-use commercial retail building here on the east, they both have drive-throughs. So those are always controversial. I'm sure we'll get more information as this develops and comes along. The initial thing that I think that people are going to talk about with the car wash is the fact that they're very noisy. So there are residents behind this that's uphill, Sound Carriage. I imagine they'll have a noise study, and we'll have to learn about how they plan to mitigate it. When there was a quick quack proposed, it was in the Sacramento Business Journal for the Sienna Ridge Shopping Center. and it was just a few hundred feet from the walls of the Toronto J6 development. When that came up, I heard from a lot of people very, very quickly that they're concerned about the noise. And by happenstance, I was at Green Acres Nursery in Folsom. It's quick clack right below it, and yeah, it was really noisy, even up the hill and away from it, and the freeway over there on the other side. So this is what's coming. This is just a first look to let people know that this is a plan that's in motion, and that we expect to have a discussion about this, and your feedback should be important. So I don't think, did I have anything else? No, that was it. So I'll open up for any questions, people. I don't have any informed answers, but if anybody has any questions in the room, no?
So the drive-through restaurant implies fast food?
Well, should,
Doesn't
yes,
have to be, but it implies that, right?
certainly.
They had talked about across the street at the Arco, putting in a
And
fast
that
food
was a
facility,
battle.
right?
That was a battle, and then.
Right.
As Supervisor Heidel speaks of, with the AM/PM ARCO, they have a car wash as well.
Right.
So there's already sort of an implied acceptance that that is something that was approved in the area. So the car wash, as long as they mitigate the noise, I imagine that's the path that they're going to be following. The
Yeah.
drive-through, I don't know what that does. The traffic, they are providing an extra long turn lane there as part of the other project. It was also part of the City of Folsom project where they're widening the road. But the applicant for when they were getting the approval on the El Dorado Hills Folsom self-storage, part of their big pitch was that they're going to have a long right turn lane that would enable sort of a queuing and a deacceleration for access to their property. They're going to have a shared parking lot where they have reciprocal rights between the two developments for driving through. It's a right in and right out only onto Green Valley Road. Don't know yet what the access on the east side of the project on Sophia Parkway is going to be. It's a divided road right there. So I'm imagining it's right in, right out only as well.
Probably.
So anybody who wants to go west on Green Valley is going to be turning around somewhere along Sophia Parkway, or they're going to go on to Green Valley and make a U-turn someplace else. So all things that we'll be talking about, the traffic analysis and the impacts, the noise, the architecture. There are some homes behind this. That was a big discussion, a landscaping, the elements of the self-storage, on the folks who live right there. So if there aren't any questions.
I'll just make a comment. We do have a learning experience from what happened down in Saratoga.
Yeah.
And those tight drive-through areas and stuff. And I was not in support of that, although the planning commission approved it at the point. And I think the point is there's some very tight spots. You have to be very careful with drive-throughs and what kind of uses. I mean, if you put a Chick-fil-A in there, and I don't think it's large enough through it, you totally change the demand for entrance and egress into that facility as opposed to a Jack in the Box or something, right? So sometimes it's the establishment that makes the difference on what that traffic flow is going to be.
Yeah, so I don't know if they have a tenant in mind or identified what the other drive-through would be. It could be a bank. It could be
right,
anything like that.
Right.
So it could technically be Starbucks.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's my feedback, since John pointed it out for us. That was something that we had provided as APAC. Our finding was that we did not support the Chick-fil-A. There's actually two projects with Habit Burger. There were going to be two drive-throughs. The applicant narrowed it down and got it down to one drive-through. It got approved. The residents, I want to say, worked collaboratively with the applicant, but technically they threatened to sue the applicant. They came to an agreement and they switched it to a Starbucks. I've been over in the parking lot. It's a mess. We talked about the drive-through standard in the ordinance, in the county ordinance. I think it's inadequate. It's just been updated. I think it's still inadequate.
Yeah.
This is how development is right now, is that you squeeze as much in as you can.
Yep.
And we talk about queuing lanes and not blocking drive aisles or drive spaces. They do, and there's no two ways about it. So as we learn more about this project, there's an opportunity for everybody to weigh in on it. So.
Good way to state it. Yeah.
And I didn't know if anybody, Brooke or anybody else wants to weigh in on this. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead. So tonight we're going to update everybody about some of our subcommittee work, and specifically about the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan, which we learned is coming back to the Planning Commission for an informational meeting on April 28th. Essentially, there's one planning commissioner who has heard all the previous planning commission hearings on this, and the other planning commissioners, by virtue of being new to the planning commission, have not had the opportunity to review this. You know, we here in El Dorado Hills have lived with this for a long time, and I think I mentioned it in our community council meeting last Monday, that when the golf course closed, which is part of this project, my daughter was 2. My daughter's going to college in the fall. So this is a long road, a long path, a lot of discussion. And I think the fact that, you know, we had an advisory vote that it was advisory only, that said, you know, 91% of the voters said they did not want to see a rezone of the golf course property. 500 people showed up at the last planning commission hearing that was at District Church in El Dorado Hills in January of 2020. It's indicative of the community's concern. So we provided findings on this that basically said that we couldn't find a way to support the project, and we tried to find different ways, elements that maybe we could ask for changes, and it was just too big an ask. There was nothing where we could say that this is a benefit for the community in terms of allowing a rezone of recreational facilities, 99 acres, which, you know, you can't just go and pull that from some other space. So that was our finding. That, and then we also determined that our assessment was that it violates some elements of the general plan. It's a little specious in terms of how the project is described and how it's approached. We did have several presentations from the project applicant. We were grateful to have those because the dialogue is valuable. So with that, I'm going to jump ahead. In advance of this meeting, now the anticipation is that after this informational meeting for the planning commissioners, because there are changes to the project that we don't know about yet. We don't have the documents, so we don't know what the draft development agreement is. We don't know what, there's some transportation aspects that are changing. We don't know them yet. So we can't speak intelligently about it yet, but we have someone here who has done a lot of work. Are you okay right there?
Yes.
Okay, and your microphone, you have that on green. You push a button, it turns green. Alistair Dunn, is it green? I can't see. I'm not wearing my spectacles. Oh, push that button in the middle and turn green. Now the world will hear you. There you go.
Oh, there it is.
So Alistair Dunn, El Dorado Hills resident, he reached out to APAC with some concerns he had when he was looking at the project. So tonight we're really just we thought this was valuable. A lot of the things that Alistair has determined in sort of his review of the project were coincided with a lot of the APAC findings in terms of benefit for the community and other elements that many community members have spoken about. We just wanted to provide an opportunity for Alistair to make some of his concerns public because they are a benefit for the community. It's a way to look at it. And again, we looked at this project, like, how could this project be improved so it does provide a benefit? There's a win for the community and a win for the applicant. We struggled with that and we couldn't support the project. So it's coming back in another fashion. Alistair's done a lot of work looking at this. We've talked to him quite a bit. This is a very small keyhole view of the issues that he has seen and that we sort of agree with. So Alistair, I'll let you introduce yourself. Thank you for being here tonight, and thanks for the amount of time you've committed to reviewing with us.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I would like to just say that the reason for why I undertook this work to begin with was as a developer, I'm quite familiar, retired developer, quite familiar with this kind of business in rezones, although my particular expertise is more in the economic and financial feasibility. Nonetheless, I do look at projects and evaluate them for acquisition purposes in my previous job. And so I decided to take that approach and look at this project, shall we say, holistically, and see whether there are problems that I could identify. I say problems, but really they're issues, and I put rezone issues up there. It's really a personal perspective, and I hope it's balanced. There are a lot of things that concern me, and it was a very tortuous and a long process because I went in thinking about density, and then one thing led to another, and as many times happens in one cascades and the other brings up a question. And I think, I don't know how many there are over here, but probably 8 or 9 issues.
We're at 10 on your list.
And so I really would appreciate an opportunity to put together a issues-oriented PowerPoint and share that with you. Although what is up on the screen there is 2 of the 8 issues. I think that it warrants this is just a bullet line. It warrants explanations. And, you know, this is not for or against the project. It's just looking at it from a developer's perspective, but a developer's perspective from what it does to the El Dorado Hills community. And basically, it's looks at the costs, the benefits, and the impacts from the community's perspective, not the developers, which up to now has been only the only perspective that I have seen. So unless there are specific questions that you might.
I think that if we just want to highlight just the sort of the issue, we don't have to detail it because we want to provide that opportunity for you. Yeah. You know, Oscar's been very generous with his time, and he's put a lot of effort into this. We'd like to make his materials available in the fashion he's willing to share it with us because we appreciate it. We'll post it to the website when he's ready for that to be something that's he considers to be a sort of finished product. And that we'd like to have another discussion about this, but we think it needs to probably be its own meeting. So if the Planning Commission is going to hear in a deliberative fashion on May 12th, that's the day after our next meeting. So we still don't even have the updated project documents yet. So if we see those 2 weeks before the meeting, it's conceivable that we'll want to schedule perhaps a Zoom meeting and just review in more detail what Alistair has prepared in terms of what he sees as issues with some supporting documentation to sort of explain for the community. So, you know, this is a different set of eyes looking at this that we haven't had the opportunity to see it yet. So we might schedule a meeting either at the end of April, the first week in May before the Planning Commission meeting. If they don't hear it at the May 12th Planning Commission hearing, then we'll go ahead and we'll try to schedule it for our May 11th meeting and make that the focus of our meeting. So I think that the issues you started with density.
I just was wondering if the applicant for Parker is going to submit another document and we don't have a clue of what's in there.
That's supposed to be tomorrow.
Oh, they're submitting it.
If the meeting on the 28th is going to go forward, if we have planning, it's 2 weeks prior to that meeting, the information will be posted.
Okay. Okay. All right.
One caveat to that might be the draft development agreement. The other documents would be there.
Yeah. So that's the 2 elements that we have to consider when we're providing this feedback is that we look and see what the project element changes are in terms of what's being developed, what's being proposed. And then we're lucky this time. We normally, in the past, we haven't had the exposure to a development agreement. The county is a little more transparent now on how they do that. They have, instead of one person at the planning department reviewing and making the negotiation, there are several components of county government look at it. You have DOT, the planning department, county auditor controller, the CAO. There's a lot of people who touch it now. So the idea is that we're not missing something in terms of the negotiation from the county. It's not strictly a planning department thing. It's a county determination of how they negotiate it. But we had problems with the development agreement too when we were making our findings. We're trying to find a way to support elements of the project. So right now we can only make these comments on what we have had, and we don't think it's going to change
Yeah.
that much, but
If you want me to just run through
you
those.
just want to just highlight, density, what your concern is.
Well, as I said, my concern was of density, and of course, what I saw was 1,800 units, which in actual fact are less because Parker made a mistake. But 1,700 odd 70. But the point is that the proposal is for 1,000 units, and so we hang our hat on that. I went through that in detail, and it's a little long to go through all of them now, but the question is, does it really look to satisfy the housing element, or does it look to be a project convivial with the surroundings? That is a political issue, so I do give some information there. EID, well, about 30 years ago, I did some work up here for Coca Ewing and specifically Bass Lake, not Bass Lake, well, other projects here. And water has always been an issue. I read the EIR and the caveats that the consultant put forward were so compelling that I merely feel that those questions should be asked again. I've always known El Dorado Hills to have be a water deficit. All of a sudden, like Rip Van Winkle, I come back and find the slashings of water everywhere, albeit on particular conditions. So there's a little bit of concern there. Traffic, I take it as done through APAC. Private and vested rights for the golf course. Well, yes, I've read Parker's. The reason Parker states that he's entitled to develop it, and I don't pass judgment on that at all. What I do, however, is read a lot of case history, legal case history throughout the United States, which has been prompted by specific issues just like this one. A golf course, a small one, no longer economically viable. And so in this case, why guys, let's redevelop it. Well, there is a question in the legal framework as to what are the community's rights for a public course, although it was private. And I am not qualified to go through the legal minutiae on that. However, I'm well enough educated to know that it's a very big question, and it hasn't been looked at in this regard. And I think it should be, and particularly by county council. The real discussion of the community costs and benefits. Well, this is a very big one because the community is definitely going to be impacted by higher density, traffic, etc. The question is that I see a tremendous amount of fees that are being generated by this project, and they all go to the county, and they are probably going to be spent elsewhere. So I have a very serious question as to what the economic benefit that we in the El Dorado Hills have regarding this significant amount of money that goes to the county. There are also other questions about financing. EPS has done an excellent job, makes my job very easy. I know them personally, and it's just a philosophical issue more than a legal one.
Okay.
oak tree ordinance, well, yeah, this is a Pedregal, and in the good old days when I was practicing development, we had an arborist come around and number the trees and measure the caliper inch. Over here, obviously, we've come to a different way of evaluation through canopy. I am aware of that methodology. I question whether that's the right one here. And as far as the area that Parker wants to impact, I think there should be a good old-fashioned tree survey done so that the impacts are properly measured and not estimated the way it is. There's nothing wrong with the methodology that has been used. Maybe you can consider me a little bit old-fashioned, but therein lies the difference. The counting housing policy, well, I believe that because of the fees that are being generated and essentially will be spent elsewhere in the community, and knowing that there is in California and particularly here, affordable housing and workforce housing demand, I make a case where this could be a benefit to the community and provide very needed housing. So again, this is a personal view, a suggestion, nothing to do with Parker at all, but it is a benefit to the community that I think should be considered. The public facilities financing plan, well, I think that's what I call the hole in the donut, because this is a land without supposedly any use. Well, it's no use, but the question is, in an area of benefit, were these 1,000 units considered? My assumption is that they were not, and in which case there's a question whether this financing couldn't be used by saying it's interlocked with the other ones. But nonetheless, there is a very good case for doing it, and it's linked with number 7 above. Next, is that the last one, I believe?
I believe after that, it's just those two.
The county permits. Well, I had a very difficult time with this because essentially Parker asked for a large lot tentative map, and everything he asked for is obviously perfectly correct legally wise. The question I have is it a correct way of looking at this project? Because I would say that this is a very major infill project and not a specific plan rezone. And because specific plans are good for when there's planning of a very outlying area, like indeed El Dorado Hills was 50 years ago, but today this is not so whereas Parker is technically correct, I question whether the methodology for looking at it, and probably it's the same methodology, but the optic, I just feel it should be looked at as an infill project, albeit a big one. And then, of course, there are other things like the 404 and the stream bed alteration agreements. Well, Parker, if you have a large lot tentative map which says, well, the applicant will, that is to say, the applicant will be the future builder. And although I'm not looking after all, Lennar, which is a very big boy and can look after themselves, my question is that, well, Mr. Parker, if you know where the 404 permit will be required or should be required or might be required, as indeed the stream bed alteration agreement, and lo and behold, I am leading the small print in in the staff report. Well, it could well be the county that's going to have to get the 404 permit, or the CSD get the stream bed alteration agreement if they make a park there. So I feel that, you know, yeah, I don't blame Parker for wanting to stuff it off to somebody else, but I don't think it's correct. And I think the county should be very wary of that. The development agreement, well, I've been through many development agreements. And frankly, I feel that they're putting the cart before the horse here, because the development agreement, in my view, should be not discussed or even tabled until the secret documents were approved. This is an omnibus approach. But again, nothing incorrect from a legal standpoint. I question whether it's a benefit for the community. The approval process, well, this is really where I come to the omnibus approach. And I think it's, as I said, a personal taste, but I won't take it any further at this point.
So this is a very, like I said, a very keyhole view of the amount of research and effort that Alistair's put into this, and discussions he's had with our subcommittee. And we feel that a lot of the elements that he discussed align with what we've already made findings on, but there are elements that we didn't consider that, with his developer's eye, that, you know, it's informative. And as he says, there are things that are probably fine, but is it the right way to do this, because it is a discretionary project? So we're hoping we have an opportunity when we get those documents, and that Alistair's generous with his time, and that we can come back and have a more open discussion about it and get some feedback. I would like to turn it over. Is there anybody in the room that has any questions about this? Nobody's putting a hand up. So then I'll go to our virtual attendees and ask, go ahead and put your raise hand up if you want to ask a question. And Hillary, I'm going to go ahead and grab you. Your hand is up. Go ahead and unmute, and you should be, see, is it going? There it goes. Are you able to unmute? One more time.
Are you able to hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. I did not catch the speaker's name. I'm sorry. Is he on the agenda to speak?
No, his name is Mr. X. No, it's Alistair Dunn.
Would you spell that?
Well, I spell it. His last name's Dunn, D-U-N-N.
Oh, D-U-N-N. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to would you be posting this PowerPoint on APAC?
The PowerPoint we're sharing tonight is public. Yes, we'll post that. Alistair has much more detailed work that he's involved himself in. It's just a matter of whether he wants to reserve those for himself in terms of public comment, or if it's something he feels it's appropriate for APAC to review.
Okay, so I do think he's definitely right on in that. I guess that's why I was very confused at our last meeting when I commented that I was very confused about how we're gonna how a development agreement is what the Planning Commission is looking at, when it seems to me that some of the CEQA documents should be looked at. I also was hoping that APAC would have, it just seems that the Planning Commission is, first of all, looking at something that it's not aware of except for the one person. And that the community is not aware of this fact, that we almost need more time for community awareness and updates of the issues that is on this PowerPoint, because I know I've been involved with this project, but this is a lot of information that was just presented that would help us understand better too, if there was another APAC meeting in enough time to review what DOT is coming out with on this project, and also what the development agreement is looking like on this project. I'm just concerned about, why is the Planning Commission reviewing this on April 28th when, you know, their first review could be May 12th and then push it back more so there's adequate time for, you know, review of all the new issues.
Yeah, and Hillary, you make a point that, you know, we've made for a long time, is that something coming to the Planning Commission where, you know, they hope to have the documents available 2 weeks in advance of the meeting. There's no requirement they have to.
Right.
It benefits the community when we're talking about, you know, the draft EIR on this is, it's like 1,100 pages, or trying to remember. And there's been so many changes to it over the years that it's a lot to absorb. And if there's not time for the community to look at it and be thoughtful about how they approach it, you know, we're not really providing any feedback. And so, yeah, that was our concern. And the reason Alistair's here tonight is I asked him, because we knew this meeting was coming on the 28th, but we still don't have the documents. We don't know what's changed. Alistair's looked at it as it's been presented to the community. He has the same information we have. He's done this work. We believe it augments the findings that we provided. Again,
Yes.
we're not here to advocate for or against a project, but we want to find the best result in terms of, if a project's approved, then we need the community to have some benefit from it and not to have any injury. So as you said, if there's time, then yeah, we can all discuss it intelligently, and, you know, there's emotion involved, but, you know, we want to have a thoughtful review and provide fact-based response for the planning process to consider in terms of what residents see. So that's why we're assuming that if they're keeping to this schedule at the Planning Commission, if we see the documents tomorrow, we'll start looking at them. Then maybe we'll be able to schedule a Zoom only meeting that the only topic is this project and the changes that we're seeing in terms of the documents. And we'd like to do that either the very last week of April or the very first week of May, so that we can provide an informed response to the Planning Commission if they really do have a deliberation on May 12th.
Okay, so how are we going to be aware? How's the public going to be aware of this? I guess I'll call it a special APAC meeting.
Well, you know that we go ahead for our email list, and most people attend the meetings are on the email list. We will go ahead and if we elect to do the meeting, if we do an extra meeting, a special meeting, we'll send it to our mail list, but we'll also put it on our website, we'll put it on our social media, put it on Nextdoor, and then, you know, that's how we inform the community right now.
Well, I guess I'm asking you to make a commitment to a special committee meeting tonight, assuming the documents will be out. I guess I'm just wondering, you know, like everyone else, what day of the week would we tentatively reserve? What, you know, because it's important enough that I certainly don't want to miss it. And so I would like to tell people in our association to reserve that date.
Well, the way we announce our regular meeting agenda is we do it 1 week prior to the meeting.
Yeah.
If we were doing a special meeting, we'll probably do it 2 to 3 weeks before the meeting.
All right.
And then remind members, or remind the community that we're meeting. We like to do our meetings on Wednesdays, primarily because there's conflicts with other meetings. Obviously, the reason we're doing virtually is that, you know, we have to reserve a room, and it's tough to do on short notice. Fire department's been very generous here. The CSV has been generous in the past as well, letting us use the pavilion. But this is something that if it's quick, that we need to just be able to be flexible and have the community have availability to attend. So if we did a Wednesday meeting, it would probably be April 30th, or it would be May 6th. I'm looking at a calendar right. Is that right? I'm looking at the wrong month. Sorry. May 4th. I have my dates wrong. April 27th or May 4th. Okay. Too many calendars.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
And as always, the meetings are recorded and we post them to the website for people to review afterwards. And in fact, we have more people watch the recordings than actually attend the meetings in person or as we're streaming them. So
I have done that myself, and it's good because you could pass them along to people who are unable to attend. Okay, thank you.
well, thank you, because I know you've been interested in the project and we appreciate you providing feedback. And
Well, but my interest is reflective of a lot of other people's interest because they know that I'm in attendance. So.
yeah, I get a little bit of that too. I know what you're talking about. So
yeah.
all right. Well, thank you, Hillary.
Okay.
Are there any more questions from folks online in Zoom? I've got a hand going up. Hold on, John. I'm going to grab you here. And you should have the ask to unmute. You ready to go, John?
Okay. Hey, one thing that has me really concerned about this recently is, it seems like what we're moving forward with is a review by the Planning Commission, who everyone there is new except for one person. And then am I understanding correctly that then the meeting following that would be the vote by the Planning Commission?
The schedule that's been proposed is an informational meeting for the project changes that will happen on the 28th, if the schedule holds. And then the intent is to have a deliberative meeting to decide their recommendation to the planning to the Board of Supervisors on May 12th.
So maybe it's just me, but that seems awfully rushed given that, here we are April 13th, and we don't even know what the new documents are going to be. So maybe this is a question for John Heidel, is, who sets this kind of rushed schedule here? And is there a way to slow that down so that the public has more of a chance to review this and that the new planning commissioners can really understand the input from the community on this?
What I can share with you, John, is that the planning department works with the planning commission to determine the dates that they think are suitable for the reviews. So that's really within their domain. It's not something the Board of Supervisors weighs in or not. But I will tell you, I do know that the planning department is going to meet individually with each of the new planning commissioners to give them an in-brief on the history, a better understanding, would answer their questions. So there has been an effort to try to bring them up to speed as much as possible before that April 28th meeting date. But everything is subject to change. If the dates have to move out, they have to move out. I do know everybody's been a long time waiting to get to this point. It's already moved out from what was supposed to be a February timeframe to a March timeframe, now to an April timeframe. And we don't know that it's going to be posted tomorrow, all the information, because I just have not heard a commitment from planning that they have everything they need to be able to post it on Legistar and move forward with the 28th. So we may find out tomorrow that the 28th date is no longer viable, and they're looking now at May 12th for the first meeting. I don't know how that's going to play out. So, but you can certainly request, more time in between the meetings. I'm not quite sure why it's only a 2-week span. I didn't participate in that discussion, but again, that was between the planning department and the planning commission, particularly the chair of the planning commission.
So John, who would people contact to express their concerns in the planning department? I mean, who sets that agenda?
Ultimately, Rob is probably the person who makes the ultimate decision. I think Gina Hamilton is still the project lead on this, and she's a senior planner. So to do it justice, the communication should go through Gina Hamilton. And I think, most people have her contact information. If you don't, we can certainly get it to you through my office.
Okay.
But that would be the place to start. And then Rob Peters ultimately is kind of the lead for that whole area, and he takes on the bigger role of trying to make the tough decisions when the planners make recommendations or whatever. So Rob would be the go-to after Gina's inputs are received, I guess.
Okay, well, I'll be in touch with them.
Yep.
And in the past, when it comes to environmental documents, we have asked And when we asked, we were asking the applicant and the planning department to extend it. And they've been willing to do that in some cases, and in some cases they don't. So we will make that ask if we determine that, you know, we can't make an informed sort of analysis in that 2-week period. So, and you know, John, he's on our subcommittee, so I know that he'll be knee deep in it as well. So. Thank you, John. Okay,
Thanks.
Are there any, oh, Alistair, you have something?
Yes, both in reviewing the documents and the issues that I've identified. Really, the problem as I see it is that the package that's going through for approval, commission, and later on to the board, is that, again, it's the omnibus approach. I have never, ever had, and maybe this is the difference of 30 years being apart, and the question is, have you ever seen, or John Heidel, have you ever seen a secret document go through the same approval process as a development agreement? I think it's absolutely ludicrous that both of those go through at the same time. And the problem that everybody is looking at is really, they aren't secret issues, not in the general sense. There are specific issues that I run and everybody else has, but I think it's the point that the development agreement, which is the document, the most important document for a developer is the development agreement. And this thing is being ran through very quickly. And I think that is incorrect. And if it could be bifurcated, and should be, and I don't know what the county policy is, but to me, I think that's where the crux of the matter lies.
To answer your question in small bites, you know, for many years, they have gone hand in hand. You have the environmental review, and then there's mitigation, and the development agreement sort of feeds the mitigation. And it's not just saying this will be mitigated, you're saying this will be mitigated, and here are the elements of how we'll do it in the, you know, so there'll be conditions of approval, but the development agreement spells it out. I know there was a lot of that in the 1988 Dorado Hills specific plan. But the Planning Commission reviews each of those individual tentative maps as they come back, because what they're suggesting will happen with this as well. You've identified it's a large lot tentative map for financing and for overall approval, and then the specific plan gives them flexibility to meet market or other elements that change as they develop it.
But then the tentative maps are ministerial, which means, you know, this is the only time that the public is going to have anything to do. And all we're doing is reviewing a secret document, and right behind it is a development agreement, which is, and I've read it, it's very, very green.
That's very fair. Yeah, but and again, we've seen that with other projects, and I don't know, not other projects this big, but we have seen it with other projects.
Oh, yeah, but this is not a small project.
So I'll just add, my understanding is the planning department wants to have all the information so the public can weigh in at the same time on all of the final EIR responses, which is what I want to look at. What are the mitigations? Because we had a draft EIR, there's been several changes to it. We added VMT. All of those things have been responded to, but a lot of that response is going to determine what is it that's a fair mitigation associated with that. And there could be things that are in the development agreement that would reflect upon what is that fair mitigation. For instance, the wetlands, as you mentioned, and the permits required. That could be part of the development agreement that needs to be conducted within Parker's domain and not left for somebody else. I haven't read it, so I don't know all the details that are in there. I'm looking forward to reading it like everybody else is. But I will tell you the development agreement, to my understanding from the brief discussions I've had with county staff, is substantially different today and tomorrow than what it was 2 years ago. So there's been, yeah, well, that's when it was, the development agreement was put together and presented, I think, 2 years ago as a draft, right? At the same time that the draft EIR was presented. So, but the county policy has always been bring them along together so that the decision is made so everybody understands the total picture. And it isn't something that you do the CEQA and then the county comes forward and say, but here's the development agreement afterwards, right?
But the real thing is that in the development agreement, it goes straight to the numbers, and you've got all kinds of financial information, which has got nothing to do with the CEQA documents. The public facilities financing plan is a mammoth undertaking.
Right.
It's very detailed. It may have been done very well, but it's definitely out of date and cannot possibly on EPS's work, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is, I can't remember. You can't have a development agreement today. I'm just sorry, it just boggles my mind.
Well, the other factor that weighs in on it, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with what happened with the Dixon Ranch project, but we asked our auditor controller to do a financial analysis to look, is this revenue neutral? Is it going to cost the money over time, the county taxpayers money over time to subsidize road improvements or whatever? Is there deferred things that we should be aware of now, or is it really going to have a positive impact? So with what happened with Dixon Ranch is he brought forward his opinion at the board meeting where we're trying to make a decision on, does this project go forward or not with the way it was proposed? And he basically says, this is a loss leader for the county. And that came in so late in the game. If you had approved all the CEQA stuff and then the development agreement later, you're going to have that concept. So one of the things that's caused some delay is trying to make sure that the auditor controller weighs in with his financial assessment of where does this put the county when you look at that, all the terms of the development agreement. Is it really revenue neutral? Is it positive? Is it negative? Because those are the things that are part of the community's interest, and I think general interest. Nobody wants to subsidize a developer's project, right? So we need to know from a financial forecast from somebody who's been there for 20 years, is this a good thing for the county or not? So that's what we're hoping Joe will weigh in on.
Well, I quite agree. That's the thing. But how much of that, you know, sure, I understand that the nexus between the CEQA mitigation, but that is a small part, very small part.
I agree.
Of the development agreement. And so let's not get tied up with the impact of a CEQA document. And that's the reason why I suggest that for large projects like this, it should be bifurcated.
One exception I would take to that is traffic, because CEQA always looks at traffic and there's always mitigations. And then we're asking for contributions to special resources like the ITF system that we're looking to put on Elrose Boulevard to make sure that the traffic flows a whole lot better going down to Latrobe Road. And that's coming forward as a policy decision to basically codify that agreement that several people have participated in to make it an established fund. So we collect those monies over time with all these things. But that's one of the outcomes that comes out of that development agreement. You're going to have a net impact. And this is the way we're going to mitigate that impact over the next 20 years, right? Not today, but over the next 20 years.
The thing now with traffic though, with VMT, it's a different animal. I mean, we still have our level of service component that's part of our general plan, but
right.
In terms of CEQA, you know, delay times, circulation, you know, it's just VMT. So, so it's a little different. This is the first one really that takes a swing at it.
So VMT is brand new, but there are responses in the final EIR that nobody's seen relative to the comments that went in the draft. You know, there was questions raised about why wasn't this determined to be an impact and why wasn't it mitigated? And there'll be those responses, which typically people are disappointed with because they don't think it went to enough detail in terms of describing it, but that's the process. And then, you know, you can challenge it from there. But so CEQA does play a major role from the traffic circulation. Their original plan, which is to put an intersection out here on Elrose Hills Boulevard right across from Saratoga, that has changed entirely from my understanding and talking with DOT. That was going to be unacceptable because they found the traffic levels on Saratoga were about double what the DOT had anticipated they would be for this point in time, and they're growing. So that doesn't allow enough movement capacity within that intersection to bring the entrance to a major subdivision right off El Rose Boulevard. So all that's changed. And there's a new major entrance that's supposed to be brought into play. And so all of those things are moving pieces of this puzzle, which have been worked over the last 2 years. VMT caused a delay or it would have moved forward, but
Well, in that case, I would say it's let's take them together, but let's focus on the development agreement.
So,
yeah.
so, you know, we've talked about this a lot, and we were just trying to provide that initial look at this based off of old information, new information's coming. When we'll get it, we don't know. So if there's a necessity to do an extra meeting, we will schedule at the end of April, beginning of May, on a Wednesday. It'll be virtual. If this extends past May 12th, then our May 12th will probably become that meeting. So as long as we have the information and the documentation. So Alistair, thank you for your participation tonight. Thank you for providing that insight to your concerns and the things you've identified. We appreciate you taking the time to do that. And this is just one way that the community participates in this process. So with that, I'm going to, hold on, I gotta, oh, here we go. Sorry, I'm gonna jump back to this so you can all see this one more time. So as we close our meeting, we like to remind people, how do you become a voting member of APAC? You volunteer to work on a project and review, either via a subcommittee, an ad hoc committee. And then once you've completed that process of involving and being a participant in a review, you become a voting member. We've got nothing to vote on tonight. So we're all, and we don't have a quorum anyway. So, so if anybody's interested in doing that, you know, none of us knew how to do this when we started. We probably still don't know how to do it. And it's an evolving thing. Members of communities bring different skills and different knowledge that helps us improve this process. So I would love for anybody listening to this to be one of those members. And then the next thing is that we are taking public comments in advance for our meetings now, as long as you get them emailed into edhapac.comment@gmail by 5 p.m. on the Monday prior to our Wednesday meeting. Your question will be included. And with that, our next meeting for right now is scheduled for May 11th. We might have another meeting before that. It will be virtual only. So with that, there's nothing to go back to. I'd like to go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Let me make one quick final statement. As Adam Bain pointed out, the inputs from APAC are greatly appreciated at the county. That wasn't the case 10 years ago.
True.
Probably wasn't the case 5 years ago. APAC received the Community Benefit Organizational Award a couple of years ago. So I think this kind of a community input is essential for all communities in El Dorado County to be represented. We're hearing that in the rural communities too. They want design review committee authority for stuff, right? We have a few of those in the county, but everybody in the different areas is now starting to recognize they want to have a stronger voice, which means they have to put some time in, some elbow grease, which APAC has been doing for 30 something years to try to bring the information forward.
Started that.
I forget, but
to your point, there are other area advisory committees.
Yes.
Many of them are appointed by the board of supervisors. They're the board member, the committee members. I want to say Cool is not. Cool's volunteers. I want to say the Cool Pilot Hill is volunteers.
Cameron Park one I think is.
Cameron Park is appointed by they have a design review committee.
Right.
And so when those committees have meetings, we try to post that on our APAC website and share it with our social media, because our reach is more than just El Dorado Hills. And we want to support those people doing those things in their communities, just like we want them to support us. So it's all public participation. You don't have to get up in front of a camera like this and say anything. If you have questions or if you have things that will improve the process, we want to hear. So,
thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys, everyone tonight. I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting, and we hope to talk to everyone soon. Have a good Easter.
I'll look forward to it on Sunday, right? All right.